And thousands of Iraqis have gathered in Baghdad to protest against government corruption. The prominent Shia cleric Muqtada al Sadr called for this demonstration to put more pressure on the Prime Minister to form a new government and carry out reforms. Let's get more on this story and these protests. Sami Hamdi joins us now with more on this. He's the editor of International Interest, a current affairs magazine focusing on the Middle East. Sami, many thanks for joining us. We've seen those images of thousands upon thousands of people gathered in Iraq, in Baghdad, to protest. What is fueling this? What are they protesting about?
First of all, the protesters have legitimate grievances. Lack of electricity, lack of water, mass migration as a result of the war on ISIS, rampant corruption. I mean, like many examples, one of them about the discovery that ghost soldiers were being paid by the government. So the people have very legitimate grievances, and also they want to see genuine reforms. They came out in protests last year in August. Nothing happened after those protests. Abadi announced that he would implement reforms, and until now these reforms have not been implemented. So the Iraqi people have very genuine grievances about the conduct of this government, in its conduct of ISIS, in its conduct battling corruption, and also in the fact that the very basic necessities are not being given to the Iraqi people.
And what is the significance of the fact that these people seem to be following the call of this Shia cleric, Muqtada al Sadr?
Now, the thing is, I argue that the fact that Muqtada al Sadr is at the head of these protests should give you some indication as to what is really going on the political scene in Iraq. Now, Muqtada al Sadr is at the very core an establishment politician. In 2006, when there was a war between him and former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, the latter being synonymous with corruption in Iraq, the fact of the matter is Muqtada al Sadr went to Tehran, he met with the Iranian leaders there, he came back and he formed a government with Nouri al-Maliki, saving the government even after saying that he would never enter into a coalition with Nouri al-Maliki. In 2010, Muqtada al Sadr refused to enter with Nouri al-Maliki into government once more. He went to Tehran, he came back from Tehran, and he entered into a government with Nouri al-Maliki. Muqtada al Sadr was not there with the original protesters. The original protests were actually infiltrated by a number of militias. And I argue that Muqtada al Sadr now is using these protests, or he is a tool used by Iran in these protests to ensure that the wave does not go against Iranian interests. Now, what do I mean by this? When Nouri al-Maliki was removed, Haider Abadi came to power and he was considered America's man, as opposed to Nouri al-Maliki, who was considered Iran's man. Now, there's been a big struggle between these two superpowers over Iraq. Now, when these protests came about in August, they threatened to bring down the whole political process. Now, Abadi, unfortunately, has not been able to find any political bloc to support him. I mean, we look at the various political blocs. The Sunnis are divided. They have no clear leader, neither Salim al-Jubouri, not Osama Nujayfi. His own party, Hizb al-Da'wah, is in de facto terms still ruled by former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. The Kurds have seen an opportunity in the presence of ISIS to declare independence. So they are not very keen on supporting any government in Iraq, and the only reason they haven't declared independence at this moment in time is because of pressure from the US. Muqtada al Sadr himself, now let's look at his request for a new government. Abadi already proposed a technocrat government. However, this was refused because the very political parties in parliament said that Abadi cannot form a government whilst ignoring the political parties. So he invited the parties to present technocrats. When this government was formed, or when this government was suggested, the Muqtada al Sadr and the party said this is simply another sectarian government all over again. In other words, no matter what Abadi does, none of the political forces, including Sadr, will be satisfied.
Okay, Sami, thank you for talking us through what is obviously a very complicated political situation there. Sami Hamdi from the magazine that focuses on the Middle East, editor of International Interest. Many thanks for joining us.